Okay, let's dive right in. Picture this. You're sitting in your FRCS Viva. This is it, the moment that years of training have been building up to. The examiner makes eye contact, leans in, and asks you this one critical question. This is one of those questions you just have to nail. It's a landmark trial, it's core to your specialty. Fumbling here isn't really an option. What they're looking for is a calm, structured, and confident answer, and that's exactly what we're going to build together step by step. So, here's our game plan. We're going to break it down into 5 key areas. First, why was this trial even needed? That's the clinical question. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the trial design. After that, we'll hit the key results, the numbers you absolutely must have at your fingertips. Then we'll talk about the limitations and, crucially, its real-world impact. And to finish, we'll pull it all together into that perfect consultant-level answer. Right, first things first. Any great answer in EVAR starts with context. You have to show the examiner that you don't just know the facts of the trial, but you understand the problem it was trying to solve. So why on earth was the IMPROVE trial so necessary? It all boils down to this: a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm, a ruptured AAA. It is, without a doubt, one of the deadliest emergencies we face in vascular surgery. If a patient doesn't get to an operating room, it's almost always fatal. For decades, our only real option was a big emergency open operation. But let's be honest, the outcomes were pretty grim. The 30-day mortality rate just sat there, stubbornly, at around 50%. Think about that. It was basically a coin toss whether a patient who made it to surgery would survive the next month. We desperately needed something better. And this is where the central debate was. On one side, you have the traditional open repair, proven but with a huge physiological cost. On the other side, this newer, minimally invasive technique, EVAR, was showing promise. Some smaller studies suggested it could be better, maybe with mortality around 30%, but we were worried this was just because surgeons were picking healthier, easier patients for it. We were lacking that rock-solid randomized evidence. And that's exactly the gap that IMPROVE was designed to fill. Okay, so that's the why. Now for the how. Let's move on to the trial design itself. This is where you really show the examiner that you've done your homework and you understand the mechanics of the study. So what are the key facts you need to reel off? Well, IMPROVE was a big one. It was a pragmatic, multicentre, randomised control trial. It ran between 2009 and 2013, involving 30 different hospitals in the UK and Canada, and they managed to enroll 613 patients. And here's a key phrase: patients with a clinical diagnosis of a ruptured aneurysm. That bit is super important, and we'll come back to why in a moment. Now, listen up, because this is probably the single most important detail about the trial's design. If you get this wrong, you've missed the point. Patients were not randomized to get EVAR versus getting an open repair. No, they were randomized to a strategy. One group was put on an endovascular first pathway. That meant they got an immediate CT scan. If their anatomy was suitable for a stent graft, they got EVAR. If it wasn't, they went on to have an open repair. The other group, the control group, got the standard treatment at the time, straight to the operating theater for open surgery. This real-world design is absolutely key to understanding what the results actually mean. Okay, let's get to the juicy part, the numbers. In your exam, you can't be vague here. You have to know the data. This section covers the results you absolutely cannot afford to forget. The whole trial was really built to answer one massive question. Did this new endovascular first strategy actually save more lives at 30 days compared to the old way of doing things? And the answer was, well, no, it didn't. The 30-day mortality in the endovascular first strategy group was 35.4%. In the open repair group, it was 37.4%. The numbers are incredibly close, and that difference was not statistically significant at all, with a p-value of 0.62. And here's the top-line summary, straight from the authors in the BMJ. Basically, on its main goal, the primary endpoint, the trial was negative. The new strategy didn't prove to be better at saving lives at 30 days. But, and this is a huge but, if you stop your answer there, you're missing half the story. The best candidates, the ones who really impress, are the ones who can talk about the secondary endpoints. The story of IMPROVE is actually much more nuanced than that one number suggests. And here's a perfect example. Look at where patients went after they left the hospital. For the survivors in the endostrategy group, a whopping 94% went directly home. Compare that to the open repair group. Only 77% went home. A lot more of them had to go to another hospital or a rehab facility. For the patient, getting home faster,
more independently? I mean, that's a massive win.
Okay, now let's zoom out and put this all in perspective. This is where you go from just reciting facts to showing real senior-level thinking. You need to acknowledge a trial's limitations and then explain its actual real-world impact on our day-to-day practice. So, what were the limitations? Well, first, that pragmatic design we talked about was both a strength and a weakness. It was messy, just like real life. For instance, it turned out that 13% of the patients they enrolled didn't even have a rupture. Second, there were crossovers. Some people didn't get the treatment they were randomized to. And third, the decision about whether someone was suitable for EVAR was left up to the local team, which adds a bit of subjectivity. Mentioning these things shows you've really thought about the paper. So, what was the big takeaway? If it didn't prove a mortality benefit, why do we talk about it so much? Because Improve's real impact was on how we organize our services. It basically proved that any serious, modern vascular center had to be able to offer both pathways around the clock. It solidified the idea that if you suspect a rupture, that patient needs to go to a center that can do an immediate CT scan and then deliver either EVAR or open repair, depending on what's right for that specific patient. It changed the entire system.
Okay, deep breath. We've covered the why, the how, the what, and the so what. We have all the pieces of the puzzle. Now, let's assemble them into that polished, concise, and impressive answer that you're going to deliver on exam day.
Here's your framework. It's a simple 4-step recipe. You start with the background, the high mortality problem. Then you describe the unique endo-first strategy design. Third, you state the key results, the primary and a key secondary outcome with the numbers. And you finish with the conclusion, its huge impact on how we organize our emergency services.
So when that examiner asks you the question, you're going to take a moment, structure your thoughts using that framework, and you're going to deliver this.
Improve was a large, pragmatic, randomized trial that tested an endovascular first strategy against standard open repair for suspected ruptured AAA. It found no significant difference in the primary outcome of 30-day mortality, which was 35.4% in the endo strategy group versus 37.4% in the open repair group. However, it did show patient-centered benefits, including a higher rate of direct discharge to home. Its main impact has been to establish that specialist vascular centers should provide 24/7 access to both treatment modalities to offer the best care pathway for each individual patient.